Welcome to Tell Me Where I'm Going Wrong, the podcast where two exes, Josh and Sean, discuss life, love, mental health, pop culture, politics, and a whole lot more. In this episode, we spend time chatting about our experiences with ghosts and the supernatural, the incredible longevity of The Simpsons, and the British quirk of going to the pub in the middle of a workday. Enjoy the ride.
Hi, welcome back to another episode of Tell Me Where I'm Going Wrong. And Sean, how are you this week?
I'm doing okay. How are you, Josh?
I'm good. I'm a bit hot. We're having a heat wave here in London, which, happens maybe once or twice a year.
What is the temperature today?
I think it's about 32 Celsius, that is, which I don't know what's that in Fahrenheit, about 90, low 90s, mid 90s? I don't know. Fahrenheit
I have no
confuses
idea.
me.
But people feel that it's about like 40, like in London when it gets to 30.
Yeah. Well, I think, that's the thing, like, because all our houses here in the UK are built to conserve heat and keep the heat in. So, it might be 30 outside, but it'll feel like 40 inside.
What was it like for you when you first went to Australia and you experienced that sort of heat?
Um, it was tough. I mean, obviously I'd been in hot places before on holiday. I've been to like Greece in the middle of a heat wave, but yeah, that was my first time living in a hot climate in Australia. And I don't know. I mean, the first time was when I was living in Sydney, and that's a very different heat to Queensland. Um, yeah, it's quite stifling, isn't it? I mean, but the thing is, in Australia, a lot of places are built to cope with the heat. So even if they don't have air conditioning, which a lot of places do, but even if they don't, the buildings there are built to lose heat quickly. So it's different, isn't it?
Yeah, but you say that. Do you remember that place we lived in Brisbane with Monique and Drew in 2002?
Oh yeah, New Farm.
Yeah, what was that?
Yes,
Do you remember the name of the street?
Harcourt Street.
Harcourt Street.
Yeah,
I was so hot in that house. It was
yeah,
like an old
yeah,
Queenslander style house. That's a type of architecture, if you don't know, where a wooden house is raised on stilts, wooden
yeah.
stilts, so the air can pass under it. But it had a tin roof and it had no insulation in the roof. So there were days where it was 36, 37 degrees and it was hotter inside the house than outside.
Mm,
And
yeah.
you just had to lie there and not even a fan would help. Not anything you could drink would help. It was just so hot. And do you remember when we were staying there, there was that wild dust or dirt storm that came in
Yep.
from the countryside? And it was this huge orange cloud that
Yep.
was just went up kilometers into the sky. And so walking through the house, like the air was stifling hot. There was no breeze. And you could see like a cloud of orange dust even inside the house.
Hmm. Yep. Yeah. The wild weather in the tropics,
It's quite,
the subtropics,
yeah,
actually.
the subtropics.
Hmm.
It's quite a brutal experience living in Queensland in the summer. Do you remember we also went to, is it Rockhampton or where did we go swimming with Michelle and Kale
Well,
back?
we went to the Great Keppel Islands. Remember?
Yeah,
Went.
but there was somewhere on the mainland that we went swimming and the
Yeah.
water was very shallow. And normally, anywhere you go in the world, if you jump in the ocean, even if it's hot outside, the water is a little bit cooler, like it's refreshing.
It's refreshing. Yeah. This was like getting in a hot bath. I remember.
Yeah,
Where was that? It was like Yeppoon or
Harvey Bay or something, or
maybe.
yeah, one of those places in North Queensland.
Hmm.
And I can remember thinking, being in the water and feeling like this isn't even pleasant. This is
Hmm.
not, there's nothing nice about this.
Felt like you were being like a lobster being cooked.
And obviously, you know, I also have fears for like crocodiles in. I suppose we weren't north enough for that to be a reality.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I mean, anywhere in Australia, you have the risk of sharks, of course. But
Well, anywhere in the world, you have.
well, true, but particularly in Australia.
When a few years back, when Hill and I went to Bournemouth in summer, and it
Hmm.
was a heat wave, I can remember being on the beach at Bournemouth, and it was 33 degrees or 35 degrees. It was incredibly hot. I think it was that summer, 2 summers ago, where London got to 40 degrees or
That was
some.
last summer. That was last
Was it
summer,
last
I
summer?
think. Yeah, I'm
Well, there
pretty
was the summer
sure.
before we had a. Are you sure it was last summer?
I'm fairly confident. I don't know actually. Now I'm second guessing myself, but
And
yeah, it was a.
we were in Bournemouth, and it was incredibly hot. Like it was as hot as it is today, if not hotter. And
Mhm.
it looked like the beaches in Bournemouth are beautiful. It looked like we were in some tropical paradise. Really, what beautiful white sand, long stretched beaches, and I got in the water, and the water was like ice water. So
Yeah.
even though it was like a heat wave, and people were like sweltering, and you couldn't relax because of the heat,
Mm.
the water was, I don't even know what the temperature was, but it was incredibly cold. I could not stand to be in it for very long. It felt uncomfortable.
Yeah.
But what beach in the UK sort of would, none of them would have warm water, would they, even in the height of summer?
Not really. I mean, they say the best time to go in the ocean in the UK is it September, October, because that's when the temperature is at its warmest in contrast to the air temperature or something like that. So, but even then, I don't think it's ever going to feel warm when you get in.
Do you go in the ocean in the UK? I don't think I've ever seen you go in the ocean in the
I
UK.
mean, like I have been. I don't make a habit of it really. You know, my dad lived in Hove for a few years, and
Hmm.
um, I did maybe once or twice. I think I went in the sea there, but again, the beach there is just stones. It's pebbles. It's not very comfortable to sort of walk barefoot on. And secondly, yeah, the water was so cold, that I just, yeah, it's not. I'm actually quite. The older I get, the more petrified I become of the ocean, and I can't not think about sharks when I'm near the sea. And I told you that story, didn't I, about when I was babysitting my nieces several years ago in New Jersey about
I
the
think
shark.
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah, and obviously, having grown up watching Jaws and everything, which happened, I know that was further north. That was set in Long Island, but even so, it's not that far from the Jersey Shore. And
But
so I
it
was.
looks the same, doesn't it?
It
It's
looks the
got that
same, yeah.
vibe. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It's the same stretch of ocean. It's North Atlantic, and I was babysitting my two nieces, and we were at the beach in New Jersey, and I think it was our third day there, and my youngest niece kept saying to me, "Oh, come on, Uncle Josh, let's go in the water." And I was like, "Oh, I don't know." And I was talking to the locals on the beach, and I was like, "Do you guys have sharks?" Because I was thinking, surely they must, right? I was like, "Do you guys have sharks?" And they were like, "No, no, we've never seen a shark." And I was like, "Okay." So on the third day, I plucked up the courage and I said to my niece, "Okay, let's go." And we got probably like not even knee deep. We got maybe like halfway up my shin into the water, and the lifeguard started blowing his whistle and was like screaming, "Everyone out of the water, shark, shark, everyone out of the water." And I was like, "Oh my god, it's an actual scene from Jaws." And yeah,
Did
and
you see the shark?
no, I didn't see the shark. And then I said to the locals, I said, "So I thought you said there were no sharks." They were like, "Oh, we've never heard of it here before." And I was like, "Yeah, right." And then I looked online, and there were all these like, a lot of like research, entities tag the great white sharks on the northeast Atlantic coast of the US, and you can see, like, you can track all the great whites going up and down the coast there. I mean, I don't know, it may not have been a great white in the water, but that was it. And then I was like, "Oh, I just don't think I can ever go." You'll never go back in the water, as the tagline says.
It could have been Baby Shark.
Could have been.
I had that song stuck in my head last night, Baby Shark, as I
Why?
was falling asleep. I don't know. That do 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 thing, like going over and over and over in my head.
Hmm.
How
It's,
funny would it have been if you'd gotten out of the water and it was like that episode of The Simpsons where Homer has that fake fin on his back.
oh yeah,
He
yeah.
gets up and laughs at everyone because they all ran out of the water screaming. And then Bart comes along with another one and
Uh-huh.
stands up laughing. And Homer screams, "Ah, Shark Boy!" and runs away. I wonder if there's a podcast about Simpsons quotes. There must be, right? Like
I would imagine there is. Yeah.
that would be
But
quite
how what
hilarious.
would they? Would they just be recreating quotes the whole time, or would they, contextualize them or give them some real world meaning? How could you have a
Yeah,
podcast just about quotes
yeah,
from The
or like,
Simpsons?
I mean, there's all these stuff online about how the Simpsons predicted the future,
Oh yeah, yeah,
and there are so many
completely.
things. But it's like that episode of South Park. Have you ever seen that episode of South Park where they make fun of that? Where they start
No.
someone in within the South Park universe starts saying within the show, "We can't do that. The Simpsons have already done it," and the whole episode is a joke where every storyline they think of, no matter how outlandish, they can link it back to a Simpsons episode. And at the end, they
Mhm.
decide it's okay if they're going to do stuff the Simpsons have already done because it's been running for so long now that it's impossible not to do storylines or gags or setups that the Simpsons have already done.
Okay. Yeah.
Do you remember when the Simpsons first started?
Vaguely, vaguely. I remember the little short sketches on the Tracy Ullman show.
And I remember I must have been quite young. It's one of those rare things in life that spans your tweens or childhood and your adulthood. Like it's still going, but it's
I was
something
just
that's,
about to ask, so I forgive my ignorance, but I was like, is it still being made? I mean,
yeah, yeah, it's
and
still
how
being
many
made.
episodes come out? Is it once a week? Like,
I don't know. I mean, I don't know if it's still on Fox or not. I don't know. I know that in the UK, Disney Plus owns the rights to show it, but
okay.
I don't know. I suppose Fox still owns it and makes it, but how long has it been going?
I mean, since the 80s, right?
Was it was it 89 or
Because I
88,
remember my
89?
friend across the road, who I mentioned in last week's episode, they had satellite TV because in the UK, you know, satellite TV was quite cable TV didn't exist until I don't know actually I'm not sure when cable TV became a thing. Probably not until like the mid 90s or something. I don't know, but her family had a satellite dish, and so they had access to things like MTV, which we didn't have in my house growing up. And I remember they would be able to watch the Tracy Ullman show and all these other American shows, and that's how I first saw The Simpsons.
Isn't it weird, satellite dishes and how such a big thing it was in the UK? When I
Mm.
first moved to the UK in 1998, I don't think I knew what satellite TV was because I don't think it was really a thing in Australia.
Because you already had cable TV in Australia. Because I remember we got Foxtel or whatever it was called.
Yeah, but I don't remember anybody right up until 1998 when I left Australia, moved away from Australia for the first time. I don't remember anyone having
I think we had it
cable.
at Barkham Avenue when you and I met. I think we had Foxtel at Barkham Avenue.
Okay.
I'm I'll check with Sal, but I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, I don't remember that. And I remember arriving in the UK and seeing all these little mini satellite dishes everywhere. And they were so ugly. Like they were just up and down buildings and outside
Yeah.
people's homes, and sometimes there'd be like a giant one and
Hmm.
smaller one. And I didn't understand because I was very unworldly. I didn't understand what all of these satellites were for, and then I found out it was for TV.
So we could watch The Simpsons and MTV.
Going back to heat waves, I'm going
Mm.
to address the elephant in the room and this baseball cap, this
Yeah,
cap that I'm
I
wearing.
was wondering.
I don't really ever wear a cap. I think I used to when I was younger, but it isn't really to do with the heat. But my hair is in a right state today, and there was nothing I could do to make it
Okay.
look. Do I look ridiculous? Do I look like mutton dressed up as lamb?
No, it looks fine. I mean, it's just I'm not used to seeing you wear a cap in this country, so
I kind of feel when I'm 50 years old, is it an appropriate thing to do to walk around in a hat that somebody who's
yeah.
20 might wear?
No, you certainly can. I mean, you might want to get something a little more distinguished, like a trilby or I don't know, maybe a fedora, bit of an air of mystique.
Is this more distinguished? Oh,
Yeah, I think
actually,
it's
my hat.
fine.
Oh, I think the hat sorted it out.
The cap's sorted out. It's the magic cap.
But now I've got this like red mark across my head. Maybe now I have to wear the
I
hat.
don't. It doesn't really show up on camera. I don't think.
It doesn't. What
No.
if I wear it backwards? Do you? You've gone through some some hat phases in your life, haven't you?
I don't know about hat phases, caps, yes, but I don't
No, no,
know.
you've been hat phases.
Well, no, I don't. I don't think that's a fair comment. I've owned hats just for like out of necessity in Australia.
What?
Um,
No, what was that hat you used to wear? It was like I don't know the style of it, but it was like a little straw. I don't know if it's a trilby or not. I don't know hat
when?
terminology.
What period are we talking about? I don't know what you mean.
It kind of like. Do you remember? I'm gonna try and hold it together for this.
I don't know where you're
I
going with
don't
this.
know if you remember High School Musical, but
No,
you probably
very well.
recognize some of the photos or characters, or Zac Efron or Ashley Tisdale. But do you remember there was a gay character in it who wasn't gay because it was Disney or whatever. He wasn't openly gay, but he was gay coded. I think his name was Ryan. I'm not sure, and he wore a hat everywhere. It was around that period of like whenever that was, like the mid 2000s, or and people like Ashley Simpson or whoever would wear these hats. And you had a hat. I'm not saying it was
What?
inspired by High School Musical, but you had a hat, and every time I used to see it, like there's a photo of you probably wearing it when I think when we lived in were staying in Mexico, and you, me, and Anna were in Coyoacan, and in that photo of us sitting in front of the fountain, or you and Anna,
Yeah, yeah,
you were
yeah.
wearing it then.
But that was not a fashion choice or a style accessory. That was out of necessity.
I didn't say it was fashion.
Oh, okay,
I
okay.
certainly am not saying it was fashion. But you had this hat, and you used to wear it even sometimes when it wasn't necessary for
I'm pretty
um,
sure I only ever wore it when I was out in the blazing Mexican sun all day with my thinning
possibly.
hair.
I can remember there being like a hat phase for you.
I just, in fact, had this morning when I logged into Facebook, it just came up with a memory from 12 years ago, I think it said, of me and Anna standing on a pyramid, must have been in Teotihuacan. Me and Anna stood on a pyramid, and I think I'm wearing that said hat. Um,
And how would you describe that style? Like what genre of
I
hat
don't
is that?
know. I feel like you're exposing my lack of hat knowledge. Was that? Excuse me. Was it? I'm just looking to see if it's maybe up on the top of my
You
wardrobe
still
still.
have it.
No, I don't think I do. I don't know. Is that a trilby? I
Maybe
don't
that's
know.
what
I
it'll
don't
be.
know. I mean, I can. How many hat genres can you name? Fedora, trilby. That's all I can think of. I mean,
Well,
and those you talk about berets, caps,
like what's a
beanies.
pork pie hat?
Yeah, no, it wasn't that.
And a kubra, that Australian hat, a
Well, that's
kubra,
yeah.
like a
That's an
west.
actual brand, though, isn't it?
Yeah, but it's kind of what people call it as well, right?
It's a
Like,
cowboy hat, really, isn't it?
yeah, but we don't in Australia. I don't think people really use the term cowboy as much as they do in the USA or North America.
Hmm.
So I think it's just like when people say Hoover in the UK, that can mean any brand of vacuum cleaner. I
Mhm.
think in Australia, if you've got an Akubra, it probably is the brand Akubra, but it can also just relate to a hat that's of the similar style.
I'd say with your hat, with your cap to the back, how it is now, you look like that meme of who's that actor? You know that meme that goes around every few years, and he's like an old guy trying to dress as a young guy undercover, and
Oh,
he's like
Steve
trying to,
Buscemi.
yeah, and he's trying to dress like a skate kid.
That's from an episode of 30 Rock.
Yeah. You kind
Oh,
of you're channeling Steve Buscemi vibes with the hat cap to the back.
I love Steve Buscemi. Remember him in Ghost World?
Uh huh.
I love that. Talking about
Sorry,
what?
no, just before you go to somewhere else. Talking of Ghost World, I was editing last week's episode, I think, when you talked about Amy Mann and you said that you tweeted her before the gig at the Royal Festival Hall and asked her to play I've Had It. And I was thinking, when I was editing it, I was thinking, I don't know if that's true. I think you tweeted her and asked her to play Ghost World, her song Ghost World, and she played that.
Oh, yeah, that's true. Yeah, that is
Yeah,
correct. So
yeah. Fake news.
at Fake News, at Largo, when I first saw her perform, she played I've Had It for me
Right,
as a request.
right.
And then at the Royal Festival Hall,
Hmm.
I tweeted at her to play Ghost World, and she did.
Yeah.
So she has positively responded to my requests on two occasions, but they were for two different songs.
Do you
So,
remember when we saw Suzanne Vega? I think it was at the Richmond Theatre in London, and you asked her to play As Girls Go, and she didn't play it, did she? But she spoke about it.
yeah, she said, we don't know how to play that. And she told the story. No, she said, we don't know how to play that. And I said, well, can you at least tell me what it's about, please?
You're a very demanding audience
Look, you pay for
member.
your ticket, you've got to get your money's worth. And then she told the story. It lasted a minute or two.
Hmm.
And it was a very, she's a great storyteller. And she told a really engaging story about what that song was about. And then she joked. And then she said, now that fascinating story, we are not going to play a song about it. Everybody laughed.
So
But
sorry, what were you going to say? You were going to say something else before I corrected your Ghost World
I can't
song
remember. It was
request.
some tangent, but I can't
Uh,
remember. Did you used to wear hats when going back to hats? Did you used to wear hats when you were younger? Like when, but they're not really an English thing, are they? Or they weren't when in the 80s.
Only in winter. In winter, you would need a hat. In the coldest period.
But you don't mean a hat
Um,
like this. You mean like a
no, I mean
knitted
like a
hat.
beanie or a knitted hat. Yeah.
Well, see, growing up in Australia, we all wore caps because of the sun, and I think now, probably started in the 90s or the 2000s, a lot of schools in Australia, like government run schools and private schools, brought in rules that if a child didn't have a hat or a cap to wear outside at
They couldn't
lunchtime,
go
they
out.
weren't allowed to go outside
Mm,
because of the threat of skin cancer.
mm,
But I can remember like it being a really big deal in Australia. Like you would have to wear a cap, but then you weren't
mm.
allowed to wear it in the classroom. So there was always tension between the kids and the teachers because you'd have your cap on still, and they would tell you to take it off. And there'd be caps, sweaty, stinky caps lying all over the floor of the
But
classroom.
caps don't really they protect like this part of your face maybe, but they don't do
Yeah, but
anything
you
for your
think,
neck. I suppose in Australia you have those caps with like a I don't know what you'd call
oh,
it, but like a draping bit at the back to protect your
yeah, it
neck.
has like a little flap of material that comes
Yeah,
down. They're so hideous. Like a lot
yeah.
of the professional cricket players would wear them.
Didn't Sharon wear one in Kath and Kim? Maybe.
Maybe. But
Yeah.
what would happen, I think why people would wear caps is because you would be outside at midday or around the middle of the day when the sun was directly up. So it would
Hmm.
protect your face. But then a lot of schools did bring in wide brim hats, like floppy
Yeah. So ugly.
cotton wide brim hats, and you'd have the school logo stitched in the front.
Yeah.
And when I was doing my teacher training, and I was working at a school down near Logan. What year would that have been? 2009?
I have no idea. No.
Yeah, it must have been 2009.
Oh, maybe.
2000. It wasn't 2010,
Oh, well,
was it?
you. Oh, I don't know. My
Time
memory's
is
so bad. I think you graduated at the end of 2010. So 2010 would have been your final year in your teaching
okay.
degree,
So that's when
but
it was. That's when I was.
2000. Okay.
Yeah. So towards the end of the second half of 2010, I was on a placement for a couple of months at a school down near Logan, and it was brutal. The weather was brutal. I mean, that part. When you're in Queensland, when you come away from the coast a little bit,
Mm,
like Ipswich or like
yeah.
Logan, you're not getting you're getting all the sunshine, but you're not getting any of the relief of the ocean breeze or anything.
Yeah.
And it was so brutally hot down there, and all these kids had to wear hats. I don't even think they were allowed to wear these. I think they had to have the school issued broad rim floppy hat to go
Hmm.
outside, but not all of the students would have them, and they had to stay under covers during recess or lunchtime. What do you call recess in the UK?
Playtime. Well,
Playtime.
in primary school, it's playtime. Break, I suppose. In secondary school, break, morning break.
When I was at primary school, uh, we used to call it little lunch and big lunch. So the little lunch would go for 10 or 20 minutes, and then big lunch would go for an hour.
Hmm.
And you were allowed to have a little snack,
Little lunch.
little lunch, and then big lunch. And what do you remember about your food situation at school? Because one thing I freaked out about when I started to work in UK schools as an adult was the concept of school dinners, because that's not something we had in Australia. What's your memory of what's like food at school was like?
Well, I at primary school we had school dinners, and whether you brought your own lunch or were having school dinners, you'd all kind of eat in the same room, I think.
Hmm.
But I remember it was really scary. There was a dinner lady, as we would call them, dinner lady who would serve us, and she would come around and collect, trays. But she would berate us if we didn't eat the food. And the food, I mean, I don't know, it was so long ago, but I do generally remember it not being particularly tasty. And often we wouldn't want to eat it. And she would come and she had this, well, I mean, I say it was a giant ladle. I mean, maybe because we were all small children, it seemed giant, but it was obviously like a catering size ladle. And we would all be like chattering, just lost in our own conversation. And she would come from behind and like slam the ladle down on the table, saying, "Eat your food, eat your food." And we were so scared if we tried to go up to like where you were supposed to bus your tray. If we went up and we still had food on our plate, she would scream at us. And so I remember it being quite a scary affair.
But what did they serve you? What did you regularly have to eat?
I I couldn't tell you. And then at secondary school, because I went vegetarian when I was 11, so at secondary school, I think for the first 2 years, I was doing the school lunches. And I just remember, I mean, this would have been what, 1988, 1980, yeah, about 1987, 88. And I mean, vegetarian food back then was just chips. I mean, honestly, I feel like I ate chips every day for about a year. And then I started bringing my own lunch.
When I worked at that school in Bermondsey, the the school kitchen would serve curry and chips,
Hmm.
baked beans and chips,
Hmm.
baked potato and baked beans. Uh, what else? Fish fingers. It was
Yeah,
usually
that
quite
sounds. Yeah, that sounds
beige,
about right.
and this. I think I don't remember. Like sometimes there would be vegetables, but things like carrots and peas.
And they would have been
But
boiled for about 20 minutes.
and you can remember. You remember when I worked with Maz and Noemi.
Hmm.
There were two people who were originally from France, and they were living in the UK and working with me at the school. And in one of the team meetings, the staff meetings, they kicked up a storm and said, the food that you're serving these children is disgusting. Would it kill you to put a this offends us on a cultural level? Would it kill you to put out a bit of mixed salad with some vinaigrette? And, I mean, the kids wouldn't have wanted anyway. They wanted tater tots and whatever was.
There were some great British desserts though, like Arctic roll. Um, what else did we have?
Well, the school cake that you would get, that was like a sponge with the frosting on top, like vanilla frosting on top, and maybe some sprinkles.
Mm.
I mean, even now, like if you go to some bakeries, they'll have them as like kind of a throwback
Hmm.
retro thing to buy, like a slab of school cake, they call it.
Mm.
But in Australia, we didn't have school dinners. We didn't have as like a sit down meal. We had a little shop or a canteen on campus, like on the school grounds, called the tuck shop,
Mm.
and you would go there and buy food, and you could put your order in at the beginning of the day, or no, what would happen at little lunch? You would go and buy, I don't know, like an icy pole or like a frozen, because it was so hot. You would have like either a tub of yogurt or an icy pole or a ice lolly, and then you would put in your order. There would be brown paper bags, and you would write your name in your class, what you wanted, and you'd put your money inside the brown paper bag and leave it with the tuck shop lady. We didn't have dinner ladies; we had tuck shop ladies. And then at lunchtime, you would come back down there, and they would have like trays. You know the tray you used to put under your desk at school, like the plastic tray that
Oh,
you would
like it would go into into your desk.
yeah, it would fit under your
Yeah,
desk, and you'd put your
yeah.
pencils and books. So they would be all set up outside the tuck shop on a bench, and they would have a sign like if you were in class 2C or 5F, and you'd go and then you'd look for your bag with your name on it, and then you would grab, and the
And what
food
sort
would
of
be
things would they have?
like meat pies, sausage rolls, ham and cheese sandwiches. It was very Australian. I mean, you know what the sort of food that people eat in Australia in takeaway shops.
Hmm.
Then
Yeah,
there was this weird thing where there was a shop across the street, like a corner shop. In Australia, I don't know what you call them here. Do you call them corner shops in the UK?
yeah,
Yeah, so you just have a corner shop. In Australia in the 70s and 80s, we called them milk bars. Don't know
yeah.
why. It was
Because I
called a milk
remember
bar.
when I was oh no, sorry, I was we didn't mention them in the last episode. I was about to say I remember reading an interview with Kylie Minogue when she first was on Neighbours, and she would talk about going to the milk bar, and I would be like, "What the hell is that? What's a milk bar?" I just didn't
Yeah.
get it. But now, obviously, having lived in Australia, I know. But,
And I don't know the etymology of that. It could be that people went there to buy milk, or maybe people went there for milkshakes.
hmm,
But we used to come out of the school to go there and buy, well, I don't know what we called them in Australia, but potato gems, I think they were called. But in the US, they're known as tater tots,
yeah,
like the crispy little potato things. And because they didn't sell them at school, but the corner shop or the milk bar did, we would go across there and buy them. But really, it wasn't healthy food, I don't think, as far as I can remember.
I mean, I remember when I first was a backpacker in Australia, and there was like I suppose a milk bar or like a little, you wouldn't call it a deli, but a place where you could go and get sandwiches when I worked in at the RTA. And, being vegetarian then, it was basically salad sandwich. That was all salad
Hmm.
roll, salad sandwich. That's all you could get as a vegetarian.
I really,
Cheese and salad sandwich.
I really, really love salad roll in
Mm.
Australia. Like, there's something about that white, fresh bread roll, or sometimes it was in like a longer,
Mm.
like a sub sort of roll, and it would just be fresh salad and it'd be crunchy.
Yeah, there'd be
And
nice beetroot and stuff in it.
yeah, and sometimes they'd ask you if you want salt and pepper, and they'd put like salt and pepper in your salad roll. Loved
Oh,
it.
yeah.
But then when I came to the UK, and the English version of everyday sandwiches. Like in Australia, you would have like a salad roll or a ham and cheese sandwich. People were. Do you remember what they used to serve in that canteen in British Gas?
Oh yeah, yeah.
Th- It was
Cheese
like
and onion sandwiches, and
yeah, it was like grated
um,
cheese and grated onion mixed with mayo inside white
yeah,
bread. Like
yeah,
not toasted, not anything. It was just like a cold cheese and onion sandwich. And you might
yeah.
get that with a packet of crisps, like potato chips on the side, and then you would
Hmm.
get a can of what was one of the drinks of the day that you would get with it.
I
Like
don't know, like tango or something.
I can remember when I worked with Leslie in British Gas, and she used to go to we had a drink vending machine, and she used to go and get cans of shandy during work. And shandy is like lemonade with a tiny little bit of alcohol, right? Like
Hmm.
normally beer. And
Yeah,
she used to buy those. I don't know if it's still around, but do you remember that can that used to be?
vaguely,
And it
vaguely.
was a
Yeah,
can of shandy. And she
yeah.
used to have like one or two of those a day. And I don't think she would get drunk from it. But
Just take the edge off. Take
yeah,
the edge off. What was her name? I mean, I don't think Leslie would have worked with her, but what was it? Pat, the woman that sold that bootleg vodka.
yeah, Pat. And she was. I don't know if Pat's still around. So
She seemed like she was at death's door back in the well, when was that? 98,
98. How many years ago was that?
26 years ago.
26 years ago.
Wow.
Pat, if you're still out there and if for some reason you are listening to this, I'm sorry that I can't buy the bootleg vodka from you anymore because I stopped drinking. But
What was it called? Death? No, was it Death Vodka? No.
maybe, but
Or
it
was it
was.
just unbranded?
I think it was unbranded. I think it looked like home bottled whatever, and it had a skull and crossbones glued onto the front of
And
it.
it tasted like methylated spirits, didn't
Yeah,
it?
who knows what it was. And she had it under her desk in British Gas, and she'd pull it out and say, "Oh, I'm selling this really cheap," and she was selling it to people around the office. I mean, it's
Amazing.
outrageous when you think about it. And she wasn't the greatest person to work with, but that whole office, that was like, the office with David Brent, Ricky Gervais,
Hmm.
that working in British Gas was like that, but a more extreme, kooky version of that.
Yeah.
Like I worked with, I probably shouldn't go into it because there might be some stories that could incriminate people.
I just remember like people would go to the pub. I don't think we did, or I don't know, but people would go to the pub at lunchtime and get so drunk. Because I
Hmm.
remember when I first started there, and I can't remember the guy's name, and one of the team leaders was doing our training. And after lunch, he came back into the training room and he stank of beer, like absolutely reeked. And he was slurring his words. His like eyes were sort of crossing, and yeah, it was quite
Yeah,
a
that was
cultural phenomenon.
my first real job outside of Australia. I did have some jobs that I quit or walked out of after a day or half a day, but that was my first ongoing job, and I was working from 9 till 5, and then I was working from 6 till 9. Two different jobs at British Gas.
Oh yeah, yeah. You're doing like a data entry something.
Yeah, because I had no money, and I needed to get a lot of money. But the people that work there, yeah, everyone would go to the pub at lunchtime. And I would say to them, if you did this in Australia, you would be fired. Like you can't go to the pub on your lunch break. Like I
I don't know.
don't.
It depends. Like when I worked, in North Sydney, I won't say the name of the company, but when I worked in North Sydney, and we would drink at our desks from about 3 o'clock onwards on a Friday afternoon.
Yeah, but
Like it
that's a
was,
Friday, right? That's like a Friday drinks
yeah,
thing.
true.
They would have a drinks trolley come around, but I can also remember it was my first experience of how obsessed people in the UK were with football,
Hmm.
what a lot of people know as soccer. Because I don't know if it was the World Cup in 1998 or the Euros, I'm not sure what it was. And everyone was permitted to stop working when they wheeled the TV into the office for these games, for these
Yeah.
matches,
Yeah.
and were drinking or going to the pub to watch the football, and nobody cared. Yeah, if you
Mm.
did no work that day for a whole day, they were just like, "Yep, this is it." And
Hmm.
I was so shocked by that. That's how obsessed people were, or how much it was woven into the culture.
Mm. Yeah.
What about when you were going back to school then and sports? Did you have any events when you were at school, like sporting events that would stop the school, where you were like everyone was allowed to stop working and the teacher would let you watch TV? What sort of events like that happen?
I honestly, I don't remember. My memory is so bad. I mean, I barely remember what I was doing 5 years ago, let alone 35 years ago. I just, I'm sure, I'm sure, like, big things like the Olympic Games would have stopped us all, but I don't have no memories of it at all, at all.
I This is a really interesting theme of the podcast. A lot of you just saying, I don't remember.
I
Like people
know.
will think you've got long term memory loss.
Well, maybe I do. Maybe I do.
I remember in Australia, the whole country, I don't know if they still are because I haven't been there for a long time, but the entire country was obsessed with the Melbourne Cup, which is a horse
Yeah.
racing carnival,
Yeah.
a big horse race. And at school, the teachers would pick the most responsible student, and it was normally me in primary school because I was like the teacher's pet. And they would walk around with an old ice cream container and take bets from the other teachers. So they were teaching us bets and about odds, and then so your class, whatever horse your teacher got in the sweepstakes, your entire classroom had to cheer for that horse.
Hmm.
So your teacher won. And then they would bring in we used to have these TVs on trolleys stands that they would wheel in and out of classrooms. So they'd wheel one into into your classroom or into the school hall, and everyone had to go and watch it. And whether you wanted to or not, I mean, we weren't even asked if we wanted to. Everyone just said, "Oh, we're watching the Melbourne Cup now," and then you would
Yeah.
be cheering for your horse that
Well,
your teacher.
when I worked in Australia, in Australian offices, it was the same thing. The Melbourne Cup would just stop, and I never wanted to watch it as an adult because I hate the inherent cruelty in it. The animal cruelty is just horrific, and I would always refuse. I would abstain, and people just they just didn't want to hear it because it's such a cultural institution in Australia, isn't it? It's like the whole nation stops. Um, what's that slogan? What's that? Nap? Is it nap? Nap to the cup? There's that animal rights organization, and it's like say nap to the cup. It's very Australian. Nap, nap.
I don't remember that. I don't
Mm.
think that horse racing, I mean, it's huge in the UK, but I don't think there is one particular horse race or horse racing carnival that the entire UK stops for, is there?
Not anymore. Like maybe in years gone by, like the Grand National, I think would have maybe. I don't know. Yeah, I don't think it was ever as big as football or yeah, yeah.
It's really interesting how certain things get attached to certain groups or societal groups or classes in
Hmm.
society as well. So, like horse racing, you would imagine is quite a something that's seen as an upper class endeavor.
Not in the UK. I mean, it's you know, I suppose it's so complicated. I don't know how to explain it, but like obviously the people that own the horses are the mega rich, and I mean there was a clear link between Britain's royal family and Queen Elizabeth II, who owned and bred horses. So there was a real sort of what's the word? There was an aspirational quality to it. So people who would go to the races would get dressed up, and I mean it's also awful because it's all based around this horribly cruel treatment of animals. But yeah, just the class dynamics and the wealth disparity uh, elements to it that come into play. It's all quite distasteful on so many levels. But yeah, people would get dressed up and spend hours getting there. What do you call those thing? Fascinators? Is that what they're called?
Yeah,
Little
like a
head.
hat with a fascinator. Yeah,
Yeah.
but so now it's like people who are maybe working class will go along to an event like the Spring Carnival or whatever you call it, these horse racing events, and they'll get dressed up or their version of dressed up, and they'll
Hmm.
go along, and it's about accessing that strata for a little bit of time, like that class strata or that wealth
Hmm.
uh, pocket for a little bit of time, or pretending to. Whereas
Yeah.
in Australia, I don't know if the Melbourne Cup has ever been like that. It's always, I remember everyone was obsessed about it, and I was a poor kid. Like, even I think my mother probably bet on the Melbourne Cup,
Hmm.
and it was like it completely engulfed the entire country, no matter how rich or how poor you were or what school you went to. I don't know what it's like now. It'd be interesting to find out. But yeah, I really wish they would just abolish the entire thing, because it's so cruel,
It is.
so
It is.
unnecessary.
Listen, I want to pivot and talk about something completely different.
Yes.
And I want to talk about ghosts because I am fascinated and I am not sure. Sometimes I think I believe, and sometimes I'm not sure. So, what are your thoughts, first of all, on ghosts?
I am very much a skeptic who wants to believe in supernatural things. So
Hmm.
I'm very much, I'm an atheist. To me, the whole story of the Bible or Jesus or the Holy Trinity, that they're like ghost stories to me. They're
Hmm.
things that people invented to give a supernatural edge to understand life better. And I think that's what people do with ghost stories. We have ghost stories to scare us. We have ghost stories to tell, like a fable, to make children eat their vegetables or whatever it is. I don't think ghosts exist, but I would love it if they did. Same with vampires.
Hmm. But can we just talk about? Remember, well, two things. Firstly, do you remember when we went to the Blue Mountains with your
Hmm.
sister and her kid, and we all saw supernatural phenomena? And
Yeah.
secondly, didn't you say, was it last year or the year before when you went to Acambaro with Hill's family in Mexico and you slept in the haunted bed or something?
Oh yeah, for sure. But I don't I don't know what that is, and I'm not going to say it was a ghost. It made me feel like I was being
Hang on,
haunted.
are you talking about the one in Mexico now, or are
Well,
you talking
both of
about?
them. I mean,
Okay,
I think the one in the Blue Mountains was probably a bit of group hysteria, like where we all were
so
feeding off each other.
what happened? So Sean and I were living in Sydney. I don't know. This would have been early noughties. I don't know when it was. Um, But we were living in Sydney, and Sean's sister and her kid were up in Brisbane, and we invited them down to Sydney for the week. And we decided to go away, I think, for 2 nights in the Blue Mountains, which is about, what, an hour and a half, 2 hours west of Sydney. And we, it was the days before Airbnb, and I can't remember where we'd found like this holiday home that was for let. And we rented this place in Blackheath, I think it was, for a couple of nights. And it was very remote, wasn't it? It was set on this old bit of parcel of land which kind of backed onto forest. And it was just this one house on its own in the middle of this sort of very big plot of land. And there was an empty swimming pool, which is a bit spooky. And but I remember we got there, and the first evening we were watching a film on TV, all three adults, and Michelle had put her kid to bed in a bedroom, which was just sort of down the hallway and to the left. And so we were all sitting there watching a film, and you could see from where we were sat, you could see down the hallway towards the bedrooms. And I remember watching the TV and I kept thinking I would see things moving in the hallway or like moving in the door. Michelle had left the door to her bedroom ajar, and I remember seeing things, but I didn't say anything. I just remember the next morning when we were having breakfast and one of us said it. And I think all of us, well, three of us, all the three adults said, yeah, I saw something too.
Yeah.
And then, do you remember there was a guest book in the house, and then we started reading through the guest reviews, and there were so many that talked about the ghosts.
Yeah.
And we were so freaked out, and it was and then the second night just turned into like hysteria, like
Oh, it was chaos. Michelle was screaming that a
at like
ghost had yanked the blanket off her, and
2 in the morning. Sean and I woke up, and Michelle was screaming, and I think I ran into their bedroom, and yeah, like the blanket, the duvet or doona, as you call it in Australia. The duvet was like on a ball in the far corner of the room, and she was like screaming. And she said that she'd felt something like tear the blankets off the bed, um, and then her and her kid ended up coming into our room and sleeping on the floor, and it was a wild night.
yeah,
But tell me,
I don't know what that was about, but it was probably a bit of group hysteria.
okay, and tell the listeners, viewers, about your experience in Mexico. Was it last year or the year before?
I can't remember when it was. It was this year, wasn't it?
I
I
think
think it was
maybe,
in
yeah.
January this year.
Yeah.
But I was in Canberra, which is a country town. I mean, it's a city, but it's about a 5 or 6 hour drive from Mexico City, I think. And I had to stay with my husband's family. And this room that I stayed in has a glass box with an almost sort of life size. Oh, well, I can't say life size because the thing in it is like a saint, or maybe it looks a bit like a Jesus slash saint who's like seated in a chair, and it's got a human wig on, and it's got it is the creepiest looking thing, and it's just sat in this glass box right beside the bed, and it's quite creepy to look at. And there's a whole story about where.
All I could picture now in my head, I know it would have looked nothing like this, but all I could picture is, that scene in E.T. when like Drew Barrymore's character dresses E.T. up in drag essentially and like
Mhm.
puts a wig and lipstick on him.
That was what it was like. But I was asleep in the bed, and there were two more beds in the room, and I kept waking up and seeing what I thought were little lights like flickering on the headboard of one of the other beds. There was nothing in the room, like no light source at all. And but they were like little, tiny little, almost like when you see fireflies,
Hmm.
and it looked like that. And it happened a few times. And another time I thought I heard the bed move, like creak. And I got up and I went over and I turned the light on. There was no one in the room with me, but it was enough of a sensation that I was having that I believed that somebody was in the room with me.
Hmm.
And then the next night, Hill's brother David slept in that bed, the haunted bed, and I was waking up to go to the toilet, and to go to the toilet was even scarier because it wasn't outside, but there was like a courtyard between the house and the toilet that I had to use. So I had to go out in the dark, and it was a bit spooky. But anyway, I woke up and I looked over at that bed where David was sleeping, and I could see like a light reflecting onto the headboard again. But it wasn't twinkly lights. It was kind of like the light that you would have from your mobile phone, like a blue
Hmm.
screen sort of light. So I looked over and I was like, oh, I'll try and be quiet. Like he's probably trying to get back to sleep. He's probably looking at TikTok or something. And I opened the door and I walked out. David was asleep on the sofa. He'd gotten up after I'd gone to sleep and gone to sleep on the sofa. So I was like, who the hell is, what was that then? And I quickly went back, like 2 steps back, and I looked in, and that bed was empty. And I had to go outside then to go to the toilet. I was so scared. And I came back in and I was just like, yeah, this room is haunted. Afterwards, I like had a talk to myself and I was like, well, clearly
But
it's,
but yeah, okay. But then what? Didn't weren't
oh,
you told something
oh
about
yeah.
the?
When I mentioned it to David and a few other people and to Hill arrived like the next day. And he said, "Oh yeah, that's everyone says that room is haunted. That's where a few of my family members have died in that room." And so there's this like in the bed that I was sleeping in, or I don't know, the other bed, one of the grandmothers died, and there's this
Mhm.
saint in this creepy saint in the glass box, and it's quite spooky. But it gave me really good inspiration for like a book that I want to write about scary things happening in that town. So
Okay.
because when I would go out of the house, the main house, to go to the bathroom at night, to the toilet, the night sky was all like the house is set up about 10 steps higher than where the toilet was. So you could see out across the city and the countryside and the mountains.
Hmm.
Beautiful, but also quite spooky when you think that there are ghosts like haunting you. And it was, yeah, it was a lot of fun, but I don't think I would want to sleep in that room again, even though I don't believe that it was something like a real
So what do
ghost.
you think? What do you think the lights were? What do you think that was?
I don't know. I have no explanation. It could be an altitude sickness. It could have been me being jet lagged because I'd only arrived from the UK like a day before that. I could have been half dreaming but thought I was awake. I mean, I felt 100% awake, but I don't know. I don't have an explanation for it. But I think that's fine. I think just because we don't have an explanation for an experience doesn't mean we have to straight away go to something supernatural, because I think that's the same sort of thinking that results in religions controlling people for thousands of years. Because we don't understand certain phenomenon or things that happen to us or the world, we have to attach it to something bigger or smarter or more
I think
omnipresent than us.
that's a bit of a jump though, like from that to the
Not
oppressive
really. You
nature of
think that's how people
religions.
you didn't know, used to know why the sun would come up every day, and so they were told, oh well, it's this god, and you have to give this amount of crops to this god, or you have to kill these number of babies, or you have to do
Yeah, but
this.
that they're two separate things, like the existence or the debate around the existence of supernatural phenomenon, or I don't know if there's a better way of describing it, and then organized religion. Like they're two, I can see what you're saying. Like there's a line of thinking from one that goes towards the other, but I don't think they're mutually exclusive, and I don't think one has to lead to the other. But yeah, I see.
Yeah, like what if there was just something happening in that room that I've never experienced before, and there's a very real scientific explanation for why it happened. The
Hmm.
same with that house in the Blue Mountains. It could have been an electrical current. It could have been a shadow. I don't know. There's lots of reasons, but I love the idea of ghosts, and I love ghost stories
Hmm.
and movies. What's your favorite movie about ghosts or with ghost storylines?
Oof, I don't know. I think I grew up just devouring things like the Amityville Horror and Poltergeist.
Hmm.
They were. I still think they hold a lot of weight in my memories or my ghost ghost related cultural culturally significant things. But I don't know. I think in recent years,
But they're kind of more like possession demon things, aren't they? Not ghosts.
yeah, I
But
suppose.
like Ghost, like the movie Ghost with Whoopi and Patrick Swayze and Demi Moore. I mean, that's straight up ghost action. Or
Yeah.
Beetlejuice. I mean, Beetlejuice is kind of ghost, but also demon things, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean that's just a whole nother genre, isn't it?
Are you excited
Um,
about the second one that's just about to be released?
is that coming up really soon?
Yeah, like I saw the poster and I went past the cinema the other day. The poster was
And
up.
who's in it? Who's in the new one?
Winona
Really?
and Jenna
Is it
Ortega.
is it Tim Burton?
Yeah, and
Wow.
Michael Keaton.
Oh
So
wow. Okay.
I think Winona plays. the same character.
Okay,
What was the character's name?
I forget.
And Jenna Ortega, who famously played Wednesday Addams in the recent Netflix hit, is playing her daughter.
Okay.
I'm excited about it because I obviously love Winona more than anything.
Hmm.
I love Beetlejuice. I thought it was hilarious.
You know what? I have to say, I was never a big fan of Beetlejuice growing up. I never, I don't know. I don't know what it was about it. It just didn't hold my attention. I suppose I really liked what's the word? The, what's the word? But like the believability of things like the Amityville Horror. There was
Mhm.
it verisimilitude. Is that the word in English?
I don't know that word.
Like it, even though obviously it's all supernatural stuff, it's presented to the viewer. The story is told in a way to make it be believable. The same with something like The Exorcist. Um, whereas
Similar to the human centipede.
whereas Beetlejuice was just completely like bonkers. Fantastical. It was not presented to the viewer as like, oh, this could actually happen.
I think
Um,
for me, the main attraction was Winona.
yeah,
I maybe because you're a few years younger than me, maybe that Winona mania
yeah, yeah. I got
wasn't
the
quite the
tail end
same.
of it. Yeah, I got the tail end of it for sure.
But
But
some
yeah,
of my favorite movies, and all through the like late '80s and '90s, I was like Winona maniac, like Heather's, Bram Stoker's Dracula, Mermaids, Reality Bites, you name
yeah,
it. Anything Winona.
yeah.
I even went to the cinema one year on my own because no one would come with me to see Welcome Home, Roxy Carmichael, which is a film that nobody knows about. And I was, such a damaged teenager that I walked home from Toombul Shopping Town all the way back to Clayfield where I was living crying because I was so distressed by this Winona movie.
I don't know if I've ever seen it.
Yeah, I don't remember it being great on reflection, but I just remember it being about a sad outsider teenage girl who wanted just to be loved, and it was a very bit of a sad, bittersweet ending or sad ending. And I just
Hmm.
loved Winona always played those sorts of characters that were a little bit
Yeah,
alternative
yeah.
or left of center or
A little
and
bit on the fringes.
yeah, and she then went on to do a lot of blockbuster stuff. How was it? How to Make an American Quilt or Little Women
Oh yeah, yeah.
and movies like that. But I love absolutely. That's my favorite part of Stranger Things is the fact that Winona's in it and she's
Hmm.
reclaimed her rightful throne as the queen of the outsiders.
Hmm.
Absolutely love her.
All right. Well, shall we wrap up there? I've got lots to say about ghosts, but far too much to really go into in the time remaining in this episode. So we'll have to save that for a future episode.
Maybe there should just be one episode about the supernatural. So
Okay.
we can have a section for ghosts, have a section for demons.
Can we talk about faith, religion?
Yeah, yeah, I would group
Okay.
that in as like the supernatural. We
Okay.
already talked a lot about witches
We
um,
did, but that
in
was
the
just TV witches.
TV witches.
Hmm.
What real witches? Not sure,
Real
but
witches, film witches,
yeah,
historical witches. Um, all right, but if any of our listeners or viewers, if you have interesting ghost stories, tales, experiences that you'd like to share with us, get in touch. You can follow us, you can message us, or you can email us. I think we are, what is it? Tell me where I'm going wrong podcast at gmail.com, which I know is a bit of a mouthful, but tell me where I'm going wrong podcast at gmail.com. You can tell us your ghost stories.
ghost stories. We're also very, very open to vampire stories. So let us know any vampire stories as well, and that might come up in the supernatural episode.
Hmm. Or you can ask us to tell you where you're going wrong in any part of life. It doesn't have to just be ghost related or vampire related.
I'll tell you where you're going wrong if you've got a vampire problem.
Okay,
I'd be very happy to.
great, good to know.
So follow
All
me
right,
at Fat Gay Vegan if you want to.
And they can follow you on social media?
Yep, follow me. You can find me at Josh and the Jumpstarts. And we will be back in your feeds in about a week's time.
Okay.
Until then, take care.
Bye.
Watch out for the ghosts. Bye.